Good morning, everyone. John Detweiler, superintendent. Welcome. I want to tell you, a small world. At my church on Sunday, I do our children's sermon, and the theme was show it with action. Show your love with action. Show your faith in action. Show who you are in action. And I can't help but think of that this morning. When I talked to the kids at church, I said, talk is cheap, but will you do something about it? We can all say we're this or we can say we're that, but will we show up when it matters? And that's just overwhelming me this morning. We have 120 staff members signed up today and tomorrow. 120 on their own time on a beautiful July day because you want to do the right thing for kids. And I don't want to get emotional, but it's pretty close for me right now. It's been a pretty emotional summer, but your showing up today is huge. Thank you. Thank you for our students. Thank you for our community. Thank you for caring enough to come and try to do something better in the fall for our kids. And that's all I need to say about that. It is a district thing. We're really trying to create ways to do the best we can with our kids in a time when nothing makes sense. Everyone's an idiot. It's all his fault. It's their fault. They're lying to me. This is a conspiracy. The whole thing is nuts. But what our kids need are teachers who are solid and caring and consistent. And that's our effort today, is to be consistent as a district. So we're all on the same page. We're all saying the same things. We're using the same platforms. We're sticking together and doing the best we can for our community. Because I believe that the public schools is a rock that people have not appreciated until recently. And we have to make sure that we are that rock. Even we're being criticized, we're being accused. I have a medical degree, by the way. As of a couple weeks ago, now I'm making decisions about who comes and who's at risk and who's not at risk and things I shouldn't have to be making decisions about, but here we are. And you'll be making some of the same decisions, but we will do it because we're the public school, and public schools matter. All right. That's my little speech this morning. I've been thinking about that for 3 weeks. Thank you for coming today. We couldn't find a real presenter, so we got Brent instead. I'm just kidding. He has worked hard on this, and he's got more in about this much of his brain than I do in all of it. So I trust that you'll listen, ask questions. His worry is, he was just saying, of going too deep maybe, or going too far in the weeds, or too philosophical, or not philosophical enough. So please engage, interact, ask questions. He likes that. And as teachers, that's always better when your kids are in and they're trying to figure out, okay, what about this? What about that? So please be that active learner today. Denise, any other announcements that you can think of? Oh, the bathrooms. I'm sorry. Bathrooms are clean, sanitized. We're going to keep that up. So feel free to use that. I think that's all I have. Brent, anything? All right, ladies and gentlemen, Brent Parker. Yep.
Okay. Can everybody hear me? All right. Thank you, Mr. Detweiler, for those inspiring words. Today is going to be overwhelming. I'm just going to put it out there. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of things that we'll cover throughout this training, and this is not the end of it. There'll be more trainings coming up. We'll talk about that later. But as of today, what we're going to do is talk about blended learning and online instruction best practices, okay? Because, hate to break it to you, but Google Classroom is not online learning. That's not the end-all, be-all. So some of you drank out of the fire hose last year, and within 3 days, you went from a traditional setting to having to do Google Classroom, to having to digitize assignments, assessments, all of that stuff. So you had 3 days. That's rough. So what we're doing today is we're going to talk about how you can start now and evolve into an online educator, a blended learning educator, instead of trying to do everything at the last minute. Because I don't know about you, but if I had all of that to do at the last minute, it wouldn't have been to my level of quality. My quality assurance would not have been there with 3 days to get ready. So some of you sitting there it wasn't as big of a shock because you already had some stuff online. You're already doing some assessments online, some learning online, things like that. So today we're going to talk about how that works, but more than that, it's a theory. It's not, we will talk about tools and things like that, but today it's more about the theory of how this looks, how you're going to interact with students and families. That's something that we don't do all the time. So we're going to talk about how that works, how that looks. But before we do that, please sign in. We're doing a paperless sign in today. So hopefully everybody brought their device like they're asked to. And if you go to your web browser, your favorite web browser, and type in tiny.cc/7-14-15, you will go ahead and sign in with a Google form, and you'll get credit for being here. You'll get the 2-hour CEUs, all that good stuff for the PD training. So please do that. I'll leave that up there for a few minutes. I'm going to reiterate a little bit of what Mr. Detweiler said. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. This is Best for Kids. And a lot of what we're going to talk about today is something that it's been going on for a long time. If you haven't gotten on board yet, it's not too late. All right, so some of the things we'll talk about, literally, it's been a while since I've been in the classroom, but I was doing this at the old junior high building 10, 11, 12, 13 years ago. It's not new, okay? So things that we'll talk about today have evolved, but the idea is not new to anyone. The online, the ECOTs and those online schools, those have been around for a while. They're doing super well. That's sarcastic. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we're offering something that's competitive, if not better than what they offer. Because we want to try to keep Fremont City's kids, Fremont City kids. Okay, we don't want them going somewhere else because they might have a better online platform. So, does anybody need more time for that URL? All right, let's go ahead and start looking at this. There's if you don't know me, I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. And that's Master Yoda, Grand Master Yoda. And you must unlearn what you have learned. That's one of my favorite quotes in all of Star Wars. Today, you're going to unlearn what you have learned. Depending on when you came out of college, this will definitely impact you more if you're, let's call you a veteran, rather than some of the newer people that have come out of college in the last 5 to 10 years. But you must unlearn what you have learned is something that we need to do even at the college level, because I know there's going to be some people that raise their hand today and say, at the college level, they still lecture. That's fantastic. But you can't lecture to some of our students. And a lot of our students don't go to college. So you got to remember, not every kid sitting in your classroom is going to college. So we have to educate them to a point where they're going to understand the content, they're going to be well-rounded and be able to go through the doors and get a job someday. So what we need to understand is that, well, let me get there. I'm skipping ahead. So here we go. Face-to-face instruction we're going to talk about today, blended instruction, online instruction. All of these things that we talk about today can go into those 3 areas of instruction. So what I'm going to tell you right now is we don't know what tomorrow will bring. We have no idea. Things are so day-to-day, hour-to-hour nowadays with mandates and things like that. Who knows what it's going to look like? So we might go back to school in a month and it might be face-to-face instruction. Who would have thought last spring that we would have within 3 to 5 days be totally shut down and no one steps foot in the building again? Are we guaranteed right now that that's not going to happen again? No. So even if we go back face-to-face or a blended, we still need to understand that all of these things, all these tools that we're going to talk about today, can be used in all 3 of those scenarios. So just because right now, let's say we're going to go back face-to-face, that doesn't mean you can just ignore it and wait until the governor says, boom, we're closed. You had 3 days last time. Now you could have months to prepare, months to create content, online activities. And all of the stuff that you do can still be used in a face-to-face classroom. So it doesn't have to be online. It doesn't have to be blended. You can use those tools and those instructional techniques to go into face-to-face. All right, lecture, it's just no longer best practice. It might still happen at the college level, like I said, but let's be real. Our students don't learn like that. They really don't. So now we're looking at the PD for the last few years, we looked at combining small group instruction, SOL activities. If you've ever heard of a flipped classroom, we're going to talk about that a little bit today, because what you can be doing with these tools is integrating a flipped classroom into your day-to-day instruction. And those are the most effective ways right now to instruct our students. I have 2 young kids at home. I was their sole teacher when we went to this pandemic and we went to the shutdown. My wife helped a little, but mainly it was me, especially with the math and stuff like that. But what I found is that students don't learn just sitting there in front of a packet. They don't really even learn there just sitting in front of Google Classroom. There still needs to be a teacher somewhere in the grand scheme of things. And last spring, we didn't really have the time to be the teacher. It was more like, let's just throw some activities out, keep them busy, keep them learning, we need to get the work done, we only have this much time. What I'm going to tell you right now is you can't think that way anymore. We have to move forward. This is the time where we're not going to be asked to do it, we're going to be told to do it. It's very, very simple. So there's some theories and things today that we need to understand, that these things are now the real everyday educational theory that we're going to talk about. So if you're thinking, you know what? Let me go to my next slide because I think it's there. Yeah. So later in the presentation, we'll talk about tools that you can use. That will get overwhelming because it's not just one. Like I said, Google Classroom is great. It's in the list. But that is not the only thing that you need to know. See that camera back there? Setting that up in the corner and recording you talk for 45 minutes, that's not online instruction. Okay, that we have some issues to break down. We have to unlearn what we have learned. Okay, our students, how many of you sit on YouTube and watch 45-minute videos? That's what I thought. If I look at 2 videos and one's 3 minutes and one's 15, I'm going to go to that 3-minute video first because I'm not going to waste 15 minutes if I can just use 3 minutes of my time. So we need to understand that we need to chunk things up, break things down, and think about it in topic form. So what we can do is get our students the information they need. Because when it's online learning, the teacher is still a valuable asset, but the learning is partially put into the student's hands. Okay, so we need to understand that it's not you. You don't have the ability to stand up in front of the classroom and lecture to the kids and say, hey, Mr. Macko, you got to get that assignment in. You got 2 days, that's it. You don't have that. You might be emailing them. You might be trying to digitally communicate with them. Do you think they're on their device at all times waiting for you to contact them? No. So with that said, we need to understand that we're moving forward, and that type of thing where you set the camera up, you might record yourself teaching some students, and you throw it out on the interweb nets, that's not online instruction. So we'll get into how to fix that here in a minute. So what we'll discuss today is both online and blended instruction. Remember, both of these will go back and integrate right into a face-to-face instruction. So we don't need to understand the face-to-face thing because we already do. We got little faces sitting there. You're telling them what to do, when to do it, how to do it. That's face-to-face. How can we integrate these other 2 styles and get ready just in case we go to full shutdown again, and or we have students that choose to go online instead of come to school? Because the reality is there's going to be parents that are not going to want to send their kids back. They're scared. They're worried about, the health and safety of their children, and they're not going to want to send their kids back. So how do we still educate them? How do we still keep the Fremont City Schools kids Fremont City Schools kids with them not coming to school into our facilities? So let's keep moving. All right. The biggest hurdle of online instruction is building relationships with your students. You don't have that physical connection with them. They don't see your face in reality. They see it through a screen. So one of the biggest issues that I saw last year, it was all about lessons, content. We're going to develop content, lessons, activities, assignments, assessments, all that stuff. but the communication was lacking in some cases. All right, so that is almost more important when you're talking about online instruction than the assessments that the students are working on. So you need to understand that the communication is what we're going to talk about a lot today. We'll talk about the tools as well, but the main thing is that the communication is key because you're not only talking to the students, you also have to talk to the parents, because the parents and the families are the people that are going to take the burden on to help the kids when they're stuck, to try to help them through the assignments, the assessments, and things like that. So we need to understand that it's not just talking to the student and communicating with the student, but it's also a teacher communicating with families and parents on a regular basis. I know back in the day, and I'm sure they still do that, you might be required to do some family phone calls. You need to call home. You do it once, check it off, done. Yeah, this is not going to be that way. You're going to have to do routine checks individually with students, individually with parents. So you need to understand that communication is almost more important than all of the content and the assignments that you're sending out to the students and the families. All right. Here's the difference between spring 2020 and fall 2020. In spring, you had 3 days to prepare. We were doing packets. We were doing some blended instruction where there were some packets, there were some online. There were buildings that just had all online. It was a hodgepodge of different teaching styles and teaching methods. The one thing that I can say that I saw more than once, and I'm not talking about my own student or my own kids, so if any of those teachers are out there, I'm not saying it was you. The instructional content needs to come from you. If it's online instruction, the biggest thing is building a relationship. You know what the most beautiful thing in the world is Khan Academy. But is Khan Academy their teacher? Is Khan Academy who they're assigned to? Who all the grades go back to? No. So Khan Academy was used a ton last year. Here's a Khan Academy video, watch it, and then do this assignment. At no point in there was the teacher involved, besides dictating what they needed to do. So we need to understand that as we move forward, you need to be a focal point in that instructional scheme. So you need to be the face. They need to know your face. They need to know about you. So that is a big difference between spring 2020 and fall 2020. In spring 2020, I am not dissing you. You had 3 days. You guys did a hell of a job in 3 days. But now we got a lot more than 3 days. So now how do we do it again, prepare for this again, and do it right this time and make sure it's as robust and effective as possible? So keep that in mind as we go through this, that you need to be the sole presenter in the online faction. You can't use YouTube videos all the time. You can't use Khan Academy videos all the time. That's not to say you can't use them, but that should not be the sole method of instruction. So your kids should not be watching, your students should not be watching Khan Academy videos or YouTube videos every time they have an assignment. There should be some kind of interaction with you as a teacher. It could be live, it could be recorded, it doesn't matter, as long as they're seeing your face, hearing your voice, and that helps build that relationship that is very, very difficult to do when the students aren't sitting there in front of you. So that's the difference there. And like I said, please don't get me wrong, you guys did a great job. You really did. Some of the stuff that I saw go out was amazing. And it's just the fact that even better was that you took 3 days and you got that together and you worked your butts off. I don't know about you, but when that pandemic hit and we were on quarantine, I worked harder at home than I did at the office. You know, I was answering emails at all, you know, I usually work 8 to 3. Yeah, I wasn't working 8 to 3. I was answering emails at 10 o'clock at night, at 7 in the morning. You know, it's just, they're taking phone calls. I'm sure you were doing the same thing. Your daily schedule went out the window and it's like, 24/7, I'm on call, like a doctor, okay? So I'm sure that you guys felt that too. If you didn't, because we're gonna need to make sure that we understand how this is gonna work here. All right, online instruction versus online learning. This is a big pet peeve of mine. I see everything out on ODE, you know, all of these different websites, and they talk about online learning. Online learning is from the student's perspective. They're learning through an online platform. You guys are not online learning. You guys are doing online instruction. You need to instruct for the students to learn. I can't say that, once again, that you're instructing if you're using Khan Academy videos every time. Are you creating the content? Are you making sure that that video is completely and utterly what you want those kids to know? Or are you just trusting the person at Khan Academy to do that for you? So the online instruction component is what I want to focus on today. So everything I talk about will not say learning, it'll say instruction, because it is your responsibility as the teacher to make sure that the instruction is happening. You are instructing our students. So there's the difference there between the online learning and the online instruction. But make sure that you understand too that that online means you're teaching students, you're instructing students that are not in the same physical building as you. Now that doesn't mean that you can't do that in different applications. Like I said, 12, 11 years ago at the old junior high building, I was doing online learning for students at JDC, or JJC now. I would create lessons, I would do videos, I would send that to them with a learning management system, and they would complete all their work on the computers there. That was 11 or 12 years ago. So all the stuff you're going to hear today, it's not new. It's been done. We just have perfected it, and we have way more tools in your toolbox than you did before, just because things are coming out at such a rapid rate, especially with the COVID thing. There's tons of websites and things out there, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. You got to be wary of new and fancy things that look great. You get a 30-day trial. Oh, awesome. And then you're paying $5 a month per kid. So you really want to start that? Ball rolling down the hill, get those kids used to it, then rip it away when you have to pay for them? Probably not. So we'll talk about that later too. Blended learning. That is a combination of education where the student is sitting with you for a time, and they also learn online. This is also a variation of a flipped classroom. So if you don't know what a flipped classroom is, that means that the students learn the lesson, let's say the night before for homework. So you assign a video. Once again, not a 45-minute video of you talking at the camera. It's chunked up into sections. It's big topic type of ideas, and then they watch it at night, and they come the next day, and you work on the homework in class. It's flipped. It's the opposite of what normally happens. What that does, it gives the students a professional, which is you, to help them with their homework. If my daughter was sitting in Mr. Gideon's math class at the high school, I will guarantee you I'm not going to be much help, okay? I found about 5th grade, 6th grade math. It's where I probably max out, I'd say, at this point. So I am going to say that who's better to teach my kid but Mr. Gideon? So we need to understand that especially those higher level concepts, our parents at home aren't going to understand it. So you can't rely on them to do that type of instruction or even help the students with the homework because the concepts are above their head. Now, some of our students are very, very smart. They'll figure out where to go on the internet to figure out answers and things like that, but some aren't. And not that they're not smart, but they don't want to take the time to do that. So we need to understand that this blended learning thing, you're still a part of it. The students are still a part of it. The best part about blended learning is you can still have the time to face-to-face build a relationship. Because as we've talked about for, 10, 11, 12 years in our district, the most important thing in a district like ours is building relationships with kids. Because if you just tell a kid to do something and there's no relationship there, there's a very little chance they're going to do it. So we need to build those relationships. Blended learning is better than online learning for that purpose of building the relationships. So we'll talk about that, the tools and things like that later for blended learning as well. So communication is paramount. The next few slides are all about communication. The next training will be all about communication. Like I said, communication is, in my opinion, the most important part of online and blended learning instruction, or online instruction. I almost tripped myself up there. What you need to do is you need to set clear expectations for you and your students. So some of those things that you have to do, you have to tell them how you're going to communicate, what method you're going to use to communicate, when you're going to communicate. you should have some sort of office hours. Okay, you cannot spend 24 hours a day on call to help students. So we have to get the students wrangled back a bit too, to say you cannot work at 2 in the morning on your assignment and expect the teacher, who's asleep hopefully, to be there at your beck and call to answer your questions. That's not how it works. So you have to set the expectations early on to say, this is how I'm going to get, how you can contact me, I will contact you. And you also have to set time expectations as well. So you might have open hours in the morning and some in the afternoon, because high school kids don't like to get up in the morning. You might find that more of them get online and do that stuff in the afternoon. But we need to understand that is one of the main things that you need to communicate, not only to the teachers or to the students, but also to the families and parents. Because the parents are going to sit there, the kid's going to come up at 10 and say, I got this due like at midnight today. And they look at it and they're going to wig out too. Because now they have to help their child try to figure this out. So they can't just get on the phone or text or email and expect you to answer. You might get it, but are you expected to answer? No, not if it's outside of those hours that you've set and communicated to them. How much time on average a student will be working on a course each week? This is huge. The balance between how much time you take in a classroom to instruct something and how much time a student would be doing that assignment at home are two different things. You can't expect, well, I have an hour a day, my kids are doing an hour a day plus an hour of homework. Okay, now if you add that up times if you're 6, 7 classes a day, I don't know any kid that's going to take the time to do 14 hours of work. Would you do 14 hours of classwork a day? I wouldn't. And then you're going to start picking and choosing. What's more important? What's the easiest one to do? Those students are going to try to figure that out. So what you need to understand is that you have to make realistic time frames for everything that you assign, you do, and Google Calendar is a great tool for that. So you can set up Google Calendar separately in your own Google Calendar account, or you can actually use the Google Calendar that's built into Google Classroom. Either one will work, but you need to make sure that you have things in there like to-do lists, deadlines for things, and not just like on a weekly basis, but lay it out so they know, okay, I've got 3 tests in the next 4 weeks, and I know one's on Wednesday, one's on a Friday, and one's on a Thursday. Lay that stuff out for them. Excuse me. The schedule view, if you go to the Chrome version of Google Classroom, if you go to the schedule view, it does pull it up like a to-do list. It shows the day, the time, and what they have to do. So that's something to keep in mind too, just to keep them organized instead of like having to write everything down in a planner or something like that. They can do everything with the Google Classroom version of or online version. All right. Part of the communications section of this is going to be that you're going to have to do individual meetings with students and families. It's like a parent-teacher conference, but they're not sitting with you. You're going to have to communicate. You can't do this with 3 or 4 families, 3 or 4 students at a time. Would you feel, if you had a student, or a child, I mean, and you're sitting there and you had a concern, would you feel comfortable voicing that concern with 2 other parents and families on a Zoom meeting? Probably not. So you're going to have to do some more individual, one-on-one types of communication with the students and the families. You can't have small group meetings. So if you want to break it out and say, I'm going to have a meeting with 5 or 10 kids at a time, that's fine. And then you can also go with the large group meetings. Now, I saw this last year. Saw some very interesting things last year with my daughter and the Zoom meetings. Some of their teachers could probably back this up. But the large meetings get kind of unpredictable. Let's put it that way. You just don't know what you're going to see in the Zoom meeting sometimes. The larger the group gets, the harder it is to control. So depending on the age of the students, would you want 30 first graders in a Zoom meeting at once? I don't teach first grade and never did, but I can tell you that would not be on my to-do list, is have 30 first graders in a group. So make sure that it's not too big for you to manage, because you are responsible for the communication, and oh my goodness, just think of what could happen. All right? So with all that said, those are the ways that you're going to communicate in an online instructional environment, but it doesn't have to end there. You could also do it in a blending style. You might have to do it in a face-to-face. Who knows? We might not have big groups of parent-teacher conferences and all these parents are coming in the building. It just might not be allowed. So these types of things will once again translate to all three of those different styles of instruction. All right, this one's important. Separating personal communication and professional communication is always a good idea. I can't even say it's a good idea. I say it's a must. This thing, at least to me, is my lifeline to everyone I know, everyone I love, everything I do on a daily basis. A majority of it comes out of this device right here. Do you want to use this device as your primary communication tool for school, with your private phone number and your whatever the kids could get access to inside of here? No. So what you want to do is you want to get a private number. You want to use an app that does not allow them to see your real phone number, because the older the students get, the more tech savvy they are, the more social media aware they are. Your phone number could be out on Twitter in seconds, and millions of people might have it. And then your phone's getting blown up. Not literally, but lighting up all the time because people are sending you Lord only knows what kind of messages. So make sure that you're going through the time to separate your personal communication with your professional communication. And we'll talk about some tools for that too later. But that's a key thing. You can obviously, yes, you can use your FremontSchools.net email, because that is assigned to you as a teacher in Fremont City Schools. That is your professional communication email. So that is okay. But your personal phone number that you pay for each month, I would not be sharing that with anybody in any of these scenarios. This one's important. Ask for feedback from students and families throughout the course, not just at the end. So one thing that we did is we sent out a survey to students, families, and teachers. And a lot of the feedback that came back at the end, it probably would have been nice to know during as well. So one thing that you got to do is keep ongoing communication and feedback going with the students and families. So how is the course going? Are you having any issues? Is there anything I can help you with? Can we make some things more efficient? Do you have any suggestions to make the experience better? Get that routinely. Okay, I'm not talking every day or every week, but if you have a 9-week course, maybe 3 times out of that 9 weeks, you send something out and you try to get some feedback with that. Google Forms is a great tool to use for that. It's very simple. So make sure you're getting that feedback as you go, especially at the beginning. If you've never done this before, the best thing you can do is get honest feedback from your students. Don't take it to heart. Don't take offense to it. You're new to this too. And this is one thing I found last year, is there were some people that were really, really upset about grading. The grades. My personal philosophy was, would you have given yourself as an A as the teacher? Did you do A instruction? I highly doubt that. No offense. But I highly doubt what you gave those students was worth an A. Maybe it was. A majority of it was not. So keep that in mind too. You're not going to be perfect on day one. It is not going to be amazing on day one. Even if you've done this, little bits and pieces of this for a while, it's not going to be perfect. You can always improve. The best way to figure out what to improve is to get the feedback from the students and the families. All right. We talked about this a little bit already. The parent involvement is key. Now, we know Fremont, right? No one's new in here, right? Everybody understands Fremont families, Fremont students, Fremont homes. We're not in a district where every student goes home to a parent or a family that's supportive or that wants to help or wants to watch them or feed them. It's just not how it works here. So we need to understand that When the student is doing online learning, the family, the family support, the parental support, the grandparents, whoever it is that's taking care of that student, that is key for their success. Because if they're younger, like my son, who is 10, I would have to force him to sit down and do his work. Because he would just say, I'll get to it, Fortnite. And then I would shut the Wi-Fi off and he'd go do his work. All right, so I would have to do that. I was there to do that. I was there to help him with questions. There are a lot of our students that don't have that. Now, unfortunately for them, if they choose to go to the online option, I can't say that that's going to be super successful, just because we need the parental involvement to help them at home, to get them organized, especially, in my opinion, the younger they are and the older they are. So if you take the real young students at the elementary and the high school students that know everything and I'm just good, middle school, they seem to kind of almost, not all of them, but a lot of them do what they're asked to do. I don't know why, but that's just, I guess, the age. But the little ones don't know how to get started because they're not organized. High school kids, like I said, they're just like, who cares? You know, and so a lot of our students, in all honesty, are going to go into this situation online and think, it's going to be a cakewalk. No. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of time management. It's a lot of organization. And a lot of our students don't have that. So we need to understand that contact with parents and family is key. And you can't just text them once or call them once and say, I got a voicemail, I'm done, move on. No, you've got to try to communicate, try to get a hold of them, work the best to get a hold of the parents and families to make sure that things are going smoothly and that your students that are at home are getting the same quality education that the students that are sitting in front of you are getting. So, keep that in mind as we go through this. All right, this one's a tricky one because this is what you're hearing. What you're hearing today is a lot of responsibility. I got to add that to my plate, add that to my plate, add that to my plate. Yeah, it sucks, but it is our new reality. I hate to say it, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but that's true. It's just how it is now. Every teacher in the state is going to go through some form of this. You are not alone. I don't think you're alone in the country. Things have changed. We have to change. If there's one constant in education, it's change. We change every 4 to 10 years. There's something new, they rename it, but it was cool 10, 15 years ago before that, and they just rename it and cycle it through. But this is completely different. I'm 22 years in education. This is the first time I've seen something like this. All right, so let's keep that in mind. And as we're learning as teachers, remember that the parents and families at home, the students, they don't know how to use some of these tools either. So now the responsibility is, I have to teach the student how to use Google Classroom. I have to teach them how to use Zoom or Google Meet. Well, now you also have to make sure that the parents and families that are supporting them at home also need to know that and need to learn it. And that is one of the biggest things that we found in the surveys is that the parents were like, I have no idea what the student is doing. I have no idea how to help them. And a lot of that was because the student never used Google Classroom while they were in your class. I approved everybody for Google Classroom that wasn't in there already. That was all day. Approve. That told me that there was a huge pocket of our district that weren't doing anything online. They weren't doing any online assignments, assessments. So when their students went home, those kids had never been in Google Classroom. So now they're sitting there looking at this new format on a computer, and they have no idea what to do. Mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever, aunt, uncle, come look at this. And then a parent comes up, and they're looking at it like, I have no idea what this is. So what would I do? I'd go to YouTube. I'd try to figure that out. But there's a lot of people who are like, well, forget this, shut it up, and we're moving on. That's how it was. And I hate to say that, but it's true, and that's where we're going from spring 2020 to fall 2020. We got to figure out a way to educate everybody, all stakeholders, on how to use the tools to successfully educate the students. So keep that in mind. That brings us to another point here. Fragmentation. Now, this is a big pet peeve of mine. Because many students and families are not familiar with online technology tools, we need to stay cohesive as a district. This is tough because a lot of people Google things. Like I talked about this a few minutes ago. People Google things and they find this amazing tool. Oh my gosh, it's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Well, I get a 30-day free trial. I'm going to add all 150 of my middle school kids in there. And then in 30 days, they find out that it costs $5 a kid to continue with that tool. So now the students are sitting there, well, where did that cool thing go? Well, it costs money. We don't have any money. By the way, we don't have any money, FYI. So all of the stuff that we're going to talk about in tools, it's got to be free because we don't have the money to make it rain and just give everybody options for everything that you want to do. So if we look at that situation, especially in a team type of situation, I think of the middle school, for instance. If the team, the student is going to 4 core teachers a day, English, math, science, social studies. They go into that team. If the team was all using the same tools and we're on the same page with virtually everything, there's going to be some differences in math because some of the tools don't work with math like they do with English, history, and science. But let's say they're using the same tools. Think about how much easier and more efficient it would be for that student to go home and complete assignments, or not go home, just be at home and complete those assignments. So we need to understand that fragmentation cannot happen. And this is where people are going to get very upset because there are people I know that have gone out this summer and they went and they attended online trainings to find all this cool stuff out about online instruction. But all it's going to do is fragment the instructional complex of what the students are learning, what the families are interacting with, and all it is going to do is cause frustration on the part of the families and the students that are trying to do this on their own. So please understand that just because you found a great new LMS, learning management system, it's not approved by Fremont City Schools, so it cannot be used. And I know no one likes to be told, you can't use that, but you can't use that. You have to stay with the FCS-approved tools. These are tried, they're true. They've been used in the district for years now. Those are the approved things. So keep that in mind here as we move forward. You might have some crazy cool website you found that you're going to switch all of your assignments to, all of your assessments to. There's only a few tools that we have approved. They're free. They're going to be free. We know they're going to be free. All right? Google, even over the last 5 years, has started to take things away from the free Google Apps for Education and move them and make you pay for them, like Google Voice. Google Voice used to be free. Google Meets used to be free. Well, now they're like, we can't take Google Docs from them and make them pay for that, because that'll be an uproar. Let's take some of the more less commonly used tools and move them into the elite membership over here, and we'll have to make them pay for it. So that's what Google has done. And Google, if you haven't figured it out, we're kind of all in with Google, and a majority of every school in the nation, in the world, that's online is with Google as well. So our biggest fear is that someday Google is going to be like, well, we're missing out on a lot of money here, and they start trying to charge us for everything that we do with them. I don't think they're crazy enough to do that, but you never know. When times get tough, they might want to make some extra coin. Yes?
Do we still have Google Voice and Google Meet?
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute, yeah. But anyways, the fragmentation, it is one of the most important things that I think we need to avoid in this whole scenario. Not just because of the frustration of the student, but also the parents that are trying to help them at home. So that's fragmentation. Here's the deal. Our students nowadays are multitaskers with technology. I know for a fact, because my 10-year-old can sit there, he can have his iPad out, he can have his Chromebook out, and he'll be playing some game on Xbox, and he's like scrolling through the video on this one, and he's like checking something here, and he's playing the game, and he's doing it looks like the Minority Report. Remember that movie where they're like moving stuff on the screens and stuff? That's what he does. He's 10, all right? Students understand technology. They know how to consume. They don't know how to produce, most likely. Production is what we need them to do. We need them to produce papers, content, movies, whatever it might be, but they don't know how to produce. They know how to consume. They watch things, they play games, they do that kind of thing. So what we need to understand is if you take a big, fat, 100-pound textbook, you send it home to a kid, that goes off to the side. They act like it doesn't even exist, especially for online learning students. Online learning means it's online. So if you don't have access to an online textbook, you got to figure out a way to get that digitized and into their hands. Because if you give them a 150,000-page textbook, they're not going to use it. And the chances are you're not going to get it back either. It's going to go missing somewhere like it does in the phantom locker monsters that eat these books throughout all of the schools here. So we need to understand, too, that this, if it's not digital, it does not exist to our kids. They consume, they consume, they consume. So somehow you got to get it into a digital format, which will allow them to consume the information before they do the assignments. The multitasking, like I said, that obviously if you have any kid under 25, you're going to see that they multitask pretty well with technology. All right, so this is where we get to the, I just scared the heck out of you. I just probably freaked you out because it sounds like a lot of work. Well, this is what I'm going to talk to you about, is to say it's not as bad as it sounds. Okay, we need to understand that you can work as teams if possible. So there are a lot of people in this room, not everybody, unfortunately, but a majority of you that have a grade level team, they're all in the same grade level, or a content grade level team. Please think about you, and it doesn't have to be in your building. You can work as a district-wide grade level team. You can create content assessments as that team. Does that mean that because I create an assignment that Mr. Ebert over there has to use it? No. He can use parts of it and hybridize it and make it his own, but at least he didn't have to start from ground zero and build it up from the ground. So make sure you understand that work as a team. Please, it saves a ton of time. All right? I was on my own island when I was teaching, so all the stuff I talked about earlier, I did it all on my own. All right? It would have been nice to share some of that, but I didn't have that option, and some of you don't, unfortunately. But if you do have that option, please take advantage of it. Take small steps. This isn't going to happen overnight. You're not going to go home tonight and say, by next week, I'm going to have an amazing curriculum for the whole year. Yeah, probably not. It's going to take time. Crawl before you walk. Take it slow. Keep it simple. How many people have seen those like you can actually go in and animate cartoons and the cartoons dance around and they like teach the kids stuff? Yeah, that's not what you want to be doing right now. If you don't have half of these tools activated yet, then the cartoon dancing things that teach content, wait for that. That's advanced stuff. Wait till you get all of the basics done. Then you can move on to that. Set boundaries. I have trouble with that sometimes because sometimes I like to wait to the last minute to do things because I feel that my brain works better under pressure. And then I get myself all stressed out because I have to get this presentation right here done, and I was typing it on it this morning because I waited to the last minute because I work better that way. And if you ask my wife, last night I was a little overwhelmed. I did that to myself. It's my fault. But set boundaries. Don't get overwhelmed. If you get stuck on something, walk away from it. Don't throw your computer. Don't smack your computer. I've done that before. But make sure that you understand that you need to set realistic boundaries and expectations for yourself. This is the most important one up here. Stay flexible. Some people have a hard time with that. Their way is their way is their way, and every other way is wrong. Right now, your way might not be working at all. It might not even be an option. So stay flexible. Ask for help. Don't be too proud. I have email. I will say it's the summer. Sometimes I'm not amazing about checking my email every minute of every day. But if you have questions, concerns, you can always email me. Email someone up here that you know knows a little bit about what you're trying to work on. And my biggest suggestion to everybody, there's this thing called Google, okay? So if you go to google.com and you type in the search thing, your problem, I bet you money that you're going to find an answer to it like that. When people send me a question, And I'll give you a secret here. Andrew, our tech guy, Punyan, he does it too, okay? So does Corey. So if someone sends us tech issues, and we don't know how to fix them off the top of our head, Google, you'll find usually a YouTube video from some 12-year-old kid that's showing you how to do it. There are things out there that you can look up yourself. Just like we want our students to be self-learners and start teaching themselves some of these things, they're going to have to in this scenario, you have to do that as well. Okay, I'm not telling you don't email me, but try to find the answer first, and if you can't, then go ahead and email me. Try to experience what the student is going to go through. Don't expect to master everything in a day. I am not standing up here as the ultimate tech wizard of all time, okay? All I know is I've used technology for 22 years in the classroom, every day. I don't think anybody in here has had a set of computers for 22 years every day. You might share them, you might have a little experience with them. All I'm saying is I've experienced a lot of what we're talking about. I've done it in my classroom. Was I told to do it? No. I just knew it was coming, it was not going to go away, and I jumped in with both feet and started trying it, and I will tell you that it changed how I taught. My mood went up. I was a lot less grumpy because I didn't have stacks of papers to grade like this, because a lot of the digital technology will grade the stuff for you. The students were happier. They got instant feedback a lot of the time. Instead of waiting 2 or 3 days for the grades to come back, they knew right away what they got. It allowed me to teach to mastery instead of rote memorization. So if a kid got an F on a test, that wasn't the end. They were going to keep taking that test with my help until they mastered it. So it gives you the ability to change how you teach. So, like I said, I'm not going to have every answer for you, but I have had some experience in the classroom doing these types of things, and I'll tell you, it was not an overnight thing. It was an evolution of years and years and years of work, and it's going to take time. So, the best time to start is now, instead of waiting till the week before school starts, because right now, every day is different. If you look at the numbers and the waves and all that kind of stuff, every day there's these fluctuations. We don't know right now what school will look like in the fall. At least I don't. We're not guaranteed that because we don't know what's going to happen. So the best thing to do is start now and plan for the worst, because you can use those things in the classroom even if your students are sitting in front of you. What you need to do is use this opportunity to innovate. Make sure that you're trying to do some things that take you out of your comfort zone. That's not fun sometimes. But what it will do is it will get you to a level where you're going to be interacting with the students in their natural medium. How many times do you go and you see a bunch of students and they're standing around in a group? They're not talking, they're texting. They don't talk sometimes. They'll just text each other because they're probably picking on each other and they don't want somebody to know what they're saying. But that's what they do. So instead of trying to talk, sometimes digital communication is just as effective, if not more. Learn some new tools to add to your toolbox, your teacher toolbox. So make sure that we are adding some tools in there that you can use not only for blended and online instruction, but also face-to-face instruction. So hopefully someday we will go back to what we called normal, and we'll have 20 to 30 students sitting in front of us, and we'll go through the process of teaching them like we have in the past. But until then, add some tools into your toolbox to make sure that when that does happen, you don't revert back to your old ways, because times have changed and they're not going back, unfortunately. Nurture a learning community online. It doesn't even have to be online. If we are in school, nurture a learning community. Make sure everyone understands that we're a community, we're learning together. If you take some of those soul activities, the small group learning, project-based learning into account, then that is a learning community where you're not in charge solely of educating the students. They're also in charge of educating themselves and each other. So keep those things in the back of your mind. Digitize assessments. I know that technology has been hard to come by. We're working on that. But once again, that all costs money, and we ain't got none. So we're trying to get as much technology for the money that we do have into the classrooms. But if you digitize assignments, or assessments, I mean, it is going to save you a ton of work in the long run. You don't have to grade every single answer. You might have to grade some because they're a math equation or a extended response or short answer. But if you have 50 questions on a test and 35 of them are automatically graded, that's 35 you don't have to go through and grade again. So as you do this, go ahead and start digitizing your assessments. That will make your life easier in the long run. All right. This is what everybody wants to know. What tools, and I apologize that it's hard to read. By the way, I forgot to tell you this. The first rule of technology is it doesn't always work. Always have a backup plan. So yesterday I came in and I lowered that big screen down back there, and I'm standing here. My wife is standing here. Andrew's standing here trying to get that projector down out of the ceiling. That's what I was going to use. It was going to be this massive, huge 200-inch screen that everybody could see. Well, that thing wouldn't come down. So my hour and a half to 2 hours I was planning on spending here turned into 4.5 hours as we're trying to figure out, number one, if we could get that down, but then also finding a backup plan. So understand that technology is not going to work all the time. And if you think it is, you're misguided. I'm sorry. Technology is going to have glitches. It is not going to work all the time. So keep that in mind as we move through this process here, and also as we talk about these tools. Teacher websites. Websites sound archaic. I know they do. But they are the best way to communicate general information, not only with your students, but also with the parents and families. Google Classroom communicates with students. It communicates grades with the parents. But it is not an all-encompassing open forum for everyone, all the stakeholders to get to. So what we're going to do is we're recommending Google Slides for that. It's easy to use. It's free. It's built right into the Google ecosystem. And literally without any web experience, you don't need to know HTML coding or anything like that. You can get into Google Slides, and within a few minutes, you can have a generic teacher website created. On that teacher website, what I would recommend is an About You page. This is weird for teachers sometimes. They don't want to share certain parts of themselves with the students, that professional side. And then we have teachers that unfortunately want to share a lot of their personal side with the kids. There's a balance there. So what you have to do, though, is you have to give them enough information that they feel a connection with you as a person and as a teacher. So one of the things I would do there is put an About page on there and put some information about you. It doesn't have to be personal. It doesn't have to be how many kids you have or how many dogs you have or cats or whatever. But it could be, I graduated from Ohio State University. I got a master's in this, because I don't know if you know this, but some of our kids have no clue you have to go to college to be a teacher. They just think, you just sign up for it and, they'll give you the job. So share that stuff with your kids, your students. By the way, I am going to share this out. I see people taking pictures and stuff. I will share this whole presentation with you. It is actually going to be the presentation with my audio, so you can skip through it if you don't want to hear me talk again. But this whole presentation will be shared out in the next couple days, so keep that in mind. Okay, a video streaming channel service. You have a YouTube channel already with your FremontSchools.net account. Use it. All right, you can control what happens on YouTube. It's not a scary place. Can be, but it typically is not. So what you want to do is that video streaming is going to be a place where you create a video that you're going to share. Now that video could be posted on your teacher website. That video could be posted on Google Classroom. It doesn't matter, but you need to understand that YouTube is the universal streaming video format in the world. So if you're going to integrate it into another tool, YouTube is the best tool. If you want to use Vimeo or Vivo, they're not going to integrate as nicely as YouTube. And you already have the account, you just probably don't know it, and it's waiting there for you. And if you're signed into Google Chrome and you go to youtube.com, and you look in the upper right corner, your little logo's there. You're already signed in, and you'll be able to go create the content. But YouTube is what we're recommending in that. All right, just like Google Slides. If you want to use another web authoring tool that looks fancier and more, flashy, I guess it's not a big deal in that case because that's not fragmentation. Students are still going to a website. It's yours. It just looks flashier than everybody else's. YouTube, I would stick with YouTube. I would not go anywhere else. Do your video production stuff with YouTube. Shared calendar, why wouldn't you use Google Calendar? You already have a Google Calendar. It's integrated right into Google Classroom. It is the best way, free way again, to do all of your organization. That does not have to be just for your students. I use Google Calendar all the time, and I actually share my calendar with my wife over there. So I know when she's got meetings, she knows when I have meetings, we know when my kids' baseball games are, swim meets, all that kind of stuff. You can use it for other things besides this, but it is very nice to keep yourself organized, but also you can create sub-calendars, and you can make those calendars per period for a grade level content. Like you might have like Parker Math, Parker ELA, Parker Science if you're an elementary teacher, or you can keep everything in one, and you can schedule everything out like that. But Google Calendar, I don't see a reason not to use it. It is very easy to use too. Now this one could get contentious. The Learning Management System. Learning Management System is simply a place where you go to host your content, your assessments, your activities. Okay, so right now we have 2 approved for Fremont City Schools. We have Google Classroom and we have Virtual Classroom. Now everyone hopefully has heard of Google Classroom. That's the buzzword. Everybody talks about Google Classroom. And yes, we do have that. It is a very powerful tool. It is fantastic, except there's one deficiency in my opinion, and that's assessments. It really doesn't do a super good job of creating quality assessments. It's limited in what it can do. Now we also have, and a lot of you might not know this, is we have access to Virtual Classroom. And Virtual Classroom is attached to the Progress Book suite. So if you go into your Progress Book, or Grade Book, sorry, if you go into Grade Book, you can actually access Virtual Classroom through that, and that will allow you to set something up that's very similar to Google Classroom. The kids get through it using the NWECA parent site, parent access site, and they use their Google credentials to get in. That's another thing we need to talk about. Everything our students do up here that we're talking about, they use their Google credentials for every single thing. So they aren't making up some random crazy username and password that they forget every 5 minutes. They're all using the exact same username, the exact same password. We have been methodical about that for the last, since Google came into our district probably 7, 8, 9 years ago. We've been trying to switch everything over to that method if we're allowed to, so all the students understand how to log in. It's nothing crazy. It's nothing too dramatic for them because they use it for everything they do. Virtual Classroom. If you're in Google Classroom, I can't in good conscience say, move everything over to Virtual Classroom. I think Mr. Havis uses both. Mr. Havis, would you like to explain how you use both? Would you? Please.
Well, is this on? Okay. I found that there was maybe a little too much sharing within Google Classroom when there'd be an assessment because, it's Google. They can hit share and send it to all their friends. So what I started to do was I used Google Classroom to provide everything, all the background information and everything they might need, but then they would go over to Progress Book to do the actual assessment. And not saying that they can't find ways to share, but I found that it really worked pretty well. And then the grades automatically were in Progress Book, so I didn't have to then sync from Google Classroom. So it worked out pretty well.
Thank you. So, with that said, this is what I'm going to recommend. If you're in virtual or Google Classroom, go ahead and stay in Google Classroom. But if you want to kind of play around in Virtual Classroom a little bit, Virtual Classroom is definitely more robust when it comes to assessments. Now, assignments, Google Classroom is great. If you want to assign a paper, a Google Slides presentation, something like that, Google Classroom is great for that. The problem is Google Forms is that assessment tool. Now, it has gotten astronomically better and more improved over the last few years, but it is still not where Virtual Classroom is for assessments. Now, for elementary folks, though, the Google Classroom, Google Forms thing is more simplified, so I don't think it's too crazy to say that you could use that successfully because your students aren't ready to do, 10-paragraph, multi-paragraph essays. Maybe not in, first grade. They probably don't even know how to type. So with that said, those are the two LMSs. I'll tell you this. This is just me being honest. If you're worried about cheating, there's nothing you can do about it. This is what I'm going to tell you. It's better to put the learning in the students' hands, give them projects to do, somehow to prove to you that they know how to do and understand the content rather than giving them tests. It's not to say you can't, but there is a chance they're going to cheat, and there is nothing we can do about that. There's nothing we can do about that right now. So with that said, you might also have to unlearn what you have learned when it comes to assessments. All right, so just some food for thought. Any questions on the LMSs? Yes, sir. Okay, if you go to Gradebook and you click on one of your classes, if you have any in there, and you go to, where is it? There you go, and then you'll add a course and stuff like that. It's similar to Google Classroom, how you get it set up, but it is, it's all integrated into Progress Book. So your grades do automatically go in to your grade book. You don't have to copy and paste grades, things like that. But I definitely would say that Virtual Classroom is not as good for project-based learning, activities, things like that. Google Classroom is. My suggestion is, and I'm just going to put it out there, if you're going to be an online instructor or a blended learning instructor, every one of these things up here should be involved in your daily life. Now that seems crazy to wrap your head around. I got to learn all that stuff, but you'll have to understand that everything integrates with everything, and it is an all-encompassing way of doing things. So like I said, everything up there, besides the professional phone number, didn't exist. But everything up there, I was doing 11 or 12 years ago. Not with the cool tools you have now, but it was a little more work back then. It was harder to edit video, things like that, but I was able to do that. So those things are the things that you should be doing if you're going to be online instructing. A lot of people just focus on the LMS. They say, oh, I'm going to do Google. I'm going to have them do Google Docs, Google Slides, Google Forms, and I'm going to have them take assessments on there. That's not online instruction. You need a combination of these things, if not all of these things, to be a full, all-encompassing online instructor. Screencasting. Okay, I got in trouble for this one because Andrew saw it, and he saw that I had Mac up there. We're not getting Macs, okay? I don't know if you know about Macs. I love them, but they're expensive, and we ain't got no money. So we're not getting Macs. I'm putting it up there if you're like me, and when I edit video at home, I use my Mac because I have iMovie, I have Final Cut Pro, I've got all these fancy tools to edit videos, so I use my Mac. If you have a Mac, please use iMovie. It's very easy to use. If you don't have a Mac, QuickTime on a Mac will allow you to do screencast automatically. So if you have a Mac at home, that's what I recommend. We're not getting Macs. Andrew, we're not getting Macs. If you see him, tell him you know that. Screencastify is another way to do it. Screencast-O-Matic. This is one of those things I'm not going to dictate. The district's not going to dictate what screencasting tool you use. If you found something that worked over the spring 2020, then please use it. It doesn't matter how you get the content and harvest the content as long as you're harvesting it in some way. So here, these are just two suggestions. Screencastify is a Chrome extension that you add into Chrome. So if you go to the Chrome Web Store, you can add that in. You can record tabs, the whole screen, things like that. Remember that your Surface is a touch screen. So you can get your pen, if you haven't lost it, and you can write on that screen, and you can record what you're doing on that screen. All right? The biggest thing here is be creative. The only thing that limits what you can do is your creativity. All right? If you try something and it doesn't work, at least you tried it. Okay? Don't feel that you have to be like set in, all this stuff has to be set in stone and you have to do it one particular way. Get outside your comfort zone a little bit, because your students will be. If they're in a blended or online situation, a majority of those students have no idea what that looks like or how that's going to be. You're going to be in the same boat. So everything's going to be uncomfortable for everyone, and you need to tell them from day one, the families and the students, we're all learning together. Because you've never done this before, they've never done this before, so you're going to work as a team to educate that student. If you come across that you know everything and this is going to be amazing, and it's not, that relationship, that buy-in, all of the stuff that you tried to build up is gone. So you got to be honest with them. You have to tell them, we're learning together, okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. You know the content. You're learning how to get the content to them. They need to learn kind of both, unfortunately. But once they get it, kids pick up on it quick. After a few weeks, it's going to be like nothing. Did anybody else notice that in the spring? That as you kept teaching and you started doing more and the kids got used to it, it got smoother and smoother and smoother as time goes on. That's what we're looking at here. It's going to be rough at the start for everybody. But the more and more they do it, the more you do it, the more efficient everybody will get. All right, here's the next one. We don't know what video communication tools that we're going to use because everyone has started to charge for them. Zoom is now, we have to pay. Google Meet is only free till September. There's Microsoft Teams. So I'm going to tell you this right now. There is no definitive answer at this point because it's most likely going to cost us something financially. And we're going to have to go with the best bang for our buck. So if you're used to Google Meet and we move to Zoom, you're going to have to pay for Zoom. And you don't do that. Once again, fragmentation. If we've got kids that are going to Zoom for this teacher and Google Meet for this teacher, and they're going to Microsoft Teams for this other teacher, oh my God, they're going to be all lost. So we're going to determine eventually before school starts, because you can't really use that right now anyway. It's one of those things that you got to have students to teach before you can use it. Once we get to that point, we will let you know what tool we're going to use and what we're going to pay for. But at that point, that's what everybody's using, okay? I don't care if you hate it or not. We can't afford, if it's $5 for Zoom per person or it's $25 per Google per person, we're going to go with Zoom because it's way cheaper. Okay, it just comes down to the financial sense. And like I said, we're struggling financially. We got to do what's best for our pocketbook here, not for people's, well, I'm comfortable with Zoom. I don't know what to tell you. But that's going to be tricky because everybody found their niche in the spring. It was fragmented. There were people everywhere doing Zoom. There were people doing Google Meet. Some people picked up on other types of video communication tools. But right now, we are not sure which direction we're going to go. Video editing tools. Okay, this is the most daunting part of this whole list. Unless you're really, really, really good at teaching on a camera, a webcam or something like that, there's going to be pieces and parts of your video that you're probably going to want to cut out. Like I said, though, the thing that makes this easier is, do we want to shoot a 45-minute long video and put it out to the kids? No. If you can teach a 45-minute video without any mistakes, without any issues that you wanted to chop out, I'm impressed. I'm very impressed, because I'd like to go back right now and change about 15 things I've said today. All right? I can do that with a video editor. You can't do that if you don't know how to edit video. So we need to understand that the first step is doing chunks of videos that are 2 to 5 minutes long per topic. Something quick, overarching topics, big ideas, things like that. If you do that, you're probably not going to have to edit as much video. But if you're going to go and you're going to put together a half-hour lesson of you talking and you want things popping up on the screen, you're going to have to edit video. That is difficult unless you have a Mac. iMovie is super easy. It's built in, it's free with a Mac. Not telling you to go buy a Mac, but if you're going to buy a computer in the next couple years, buy a Mac. And the other thing we're looking at is OpenShot Video Editor. It is free. It's freeware. It's really good, but we're going to have the tech guys push it out to you, to your Surface. Okay, so we're going to have to wait for that. We're also going to be pushing out Smart Notebook, the newest Smart Notebook. Mr. Havis and I were talking earlier today about that. You're going to find there's a lot more functionality with Smart Notebook now. There's a lot more tools built in. This is a smart display up here. If you don't know, the elementaries, everyone will have one of these in their room. It is touch, it's like a smart board, but it's a TV. That Smart Notebook will obviously integrate right into that panel, but it will also give you more tools like online, things like that. But we don't have the software yet, and we don't have the training set up yet. That's more down the road in August, I would say. But you will have some new Smart Notebook software as well. Let's see, but OpenShot Video Editor and Smart Notebook will have to be pushed out to the Surfaces. So Andrew and Corey have to figure out the most efficient and best way to make that happen, and when to have it happen, because you can't do it if you're at home. You have to be on the network. You have to have the machine on for like 5 to 10 minutes so it can install the update and install the software for OpenShot Video. So that is coming down the road. Be patient. I'm hoping for them to get the OpenShot Video Editor out sooner than later. So if you do want to start this summer and start trying to figure out how to edit some video, even if it's just cutting the front part of your video off when you're hitting record, and at the end when you're fumbling around trying to find the stop record button, that is something that I think is going to take precedent over the Smart Notebook thing. So those are the video editing tools. Professional phone number. Remember I told you to separate the streams on your personal phone number and your professional phone number. Like I said, Google went 4 years ago and said, you know what, if you're using Google Voice with your school account, as long as you continue to use it, you can keep it. But if you don't have one and you want to start one, now your district has to pay for it. And with that comes all this other stuff. And it's only $25 per month per user. Times however many people we have in our district, times how many months that you're going to need it. Yeah, that adds up quickly. So Google, that was shady, in my opinion. But the good thing is, if you have a personal Google account, which are free, takes you 2 minutes to set up, you can create your own Google Voice number through that. So what Google Voice will let you do is it will let you text, call, and communicate. It has voicemail, and you can use an app on your phone, or you can even do it from your computer. So you can text, you can call, you can do everything. If you don't want to use your personal phone for that, you can use your computer and your device to do that as well. But use your personal Gmail to create that. Now, if somehow Google says, you know what, for $2 per person, we're going to open up Google Voice and Google Meet, and Zoom's $5, we'll probably go obviously with the cheaper version, but then we'll add in that Google Voice functionality. But as of right now, it is a paid service. But that is the best thing. There are some other apps out there. If you're already using one of those, go ahead and use it. It's not fragmented because the end user is just getting your information. All right, they're getting the text, they're getting the updates, they're getting the phone calls. Just make sure that they are getting it from the app and not from your main cell phone number. Okay, because once that caller ID comes up, they got your number. So if you make sure you're in the app when you're calling out. So those are the tools that we are going to recommend to get started. Obviously, there are hundreds of other tools, but these are the basics. Now, let me tell you this. The teacher website, that is going to be what everything is housed in. One of the things I always did is I created a website back in the day. Oh, I wish I could still see it. It was beautiful. It was like, oh, I'm joking. It was so archaic. But anyways, I created it. I was not allowed to put it on our servers. So no one was allowed to access it outside of school because that was illegal, I guess. So I put it on the network, on our server inside the school. So my students would come in and they would go to my website every day. The website every day had some major, like the top 3 links that they would go to all the time. Back then it was EDU 2.0, that was the learning management system I used. So there would be a link for that. There would be a link to Google, things like that at the top. Maybe for you guys, the digital textbook that you use. Maybe to your Google Classroom page. But that one teacher website, that first page, was there for efficiency. They knew how to get there. As soon as they would go, they would click on what they needed to, and they were off. I didn't have to tell them what to do. They knew exactly what to do. They'd come in, they'd take attendance on my smartboard, they'd go sit down, they'd log into their computer, and whew, they were off doing what I needed them to do because all the information was already on the teacher website. After they started that, after I took attendance, made sure that no one messed with the attendance up on the smartboard, I would go ahead and introduce the topic, and we would move on. All right, so the teacher website, it sounds dumb. It sounds like, that's just more work. Yes, it is. But once you get it set, you really don't have to do that much to it because it's just a jumping off point for your students. But it also is a place where the parents and families can get easily without any blocks. They don't have to log in as the student to get in, like Google Classroom, they would have to. Virtual Classroom is the same way. It's locked. They can't get in unless they have the student account. The teacher website is a place that everything that they do can center around that. All right? And it doesn't have to be fancy. Nothing up here has to be fancy. It doesn't have to look like you've had computer science classes for 10 years. Just functional. The video streaming channel, that's obviously for embedding your videos that you're making into, it could be put on the website obviously, but also on Google Classroom or Virtual Classroom. Like I said, YouTube is the most used video sharing channel in the world, and it is a Google-owned product, so it integrates into everything Google. So if you wanted to add a video into a Google Slides presentation that you're doing, YouTube is the best way to do that. And up until about a year ago or so, you couldn't put any other videos in besides YouTube videos. So YouTube definitely is there, and that can go onto the website, that can go onto the learning management system. It's up to you. Now the calendar, once again, you can embed that in the site on your teacher website. You can also use that and integrate that into Google Classroom pretty easily. It's just there for organization for you, the students, and the families. Learning management system, once again, we talked about that in depth. Those are your 2 options. I know that there's other districts that are using like Schoology and those types of things. Yeah, those are paid. These are free. They might not be as robust, but free is free. Screencasting tool, that is for you to create videos. That's for you to sit down and you could put together a presentation kind of like this. This would be the basic. You sit down, you create a Google Slides presentation, and you screencast through it. And you're talking about the slides, you're teaching through the slides, or you've got a whiteboard up on your Surface and you're doing math problems. And you're recording what you're doing on the screen, it will record your voice. This is what I'm going to tell you about all of this video stuff. It is best to get a high quality headset with a microphone. Because if you're going to use the microphone in that Surface, it's not going to sound so good. You know, they're not expensive. I mean, to me, $20. I mean, I used to spend hundreds of dollars in my classroom each year, so $20 isn't a big deal. So get yourself a decent quality, at least microphone. The speakers and stuff, it's not a big deal, but a lot of good quality microphones come with a headset built in. So you kind of look like an air traffic controller too. Let's see here. Communications tool. Once again, if you have that headset, you're going to look like that when you go on and you talk with your students and your families and your parents, but you're going to get the best quality audio through the headset. You're going to be able to hear them a lot better. They're going to be able to hear you a lot better. Or you can buy a nice like mic that you set on your desk, and it will pick that up. Once again, you can get those for $20 to $30. It depends on what you want to do with it. But that is something that you could record. Like today, I'm recording all of this. So this presentation and what I'm saying is right now being recorded into my Surface. So I'm just going to have it all. I had that camera set up, and we were going to record off that, but once again, The technology did not work as planned, so we came up with another thing. And honestly, I'm good because I don't need anybody in here to see me, because you're sitting here looking at me right now. Sorry. And that camera is just sitting over there doing nothing because everything, all the content I really want people to know is being recorded through my Surface right now. So that you can do that with Zoom, Google Meets. You can do a screen, capture your screen. You can do that without anybody on the other line, on the other end if you want. So if you want to use that as some kind of teaching tool, once again, creativity. Be creative. Try things. If it doesn't work, back to the drawing board. Let's see what else works. The video editing tool, like I said, all of those things, the video streaming channel, or I'm sorry, the screencasting tool, the video communications tool, and all of those things go into the video editing tool, so you can put like a title in if you want. You can chop the beginning and the end off if you want. So what that's going to do is that's going to allow you to make the video what you want it to be. But there's a learning curve there. I'm going to warn you. So that's something you could do if you wanted to, but I would probably wait on that till you get a little bit better at mastering the other tools here. So those are the tools that we're recommending. That's the in-depth presentation of those. We're going to have some more trainings. So next week, Monday and Friday, we're going to talk about communications. If I did all of this in one training, we would be here for 8 hours. And I don't want to be here any longer than I have to, because it's technically my summer too. So what I would like to do is schedule some broken apart trainings to get more in depth on specific content, specific ideas. So the next one will be the communication with students and families. We will talk about those tools more in depth. We'll go into and explore them a little more. I don't have time to teach you a specific tool right now. That is the biggest problem we have. I can't say that's going to be a Zoom training. I just don't have that time to make that happen. So because we want to get you guys working as soon as possible. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the different communications tools there. And then the other training will be the week after that, on Wednesday and Thursday, the 29th and 30th. And those will be the instructional and assessment tools, FCS approved. So we'll talk about Google Classroom, we'll talk about virtual classroom, the YouTube channel, things like that, more in depth at that training. So those will be 2 hours. This was more of an overarching, big picture. What are we looking to do? These are more how to do it. All right, I covered some of that today, but not all of it. We have a lot. We can definitely dig deeper into a lot of that stuff. So with that, I believe that is the end. Let's see, yep. Any questions on anything right now? Yes, sir. Yes, yep. I will share that out with everyone, because now I have all of your email addresses when you signed in, so I can just shoot you all an email from there. Yeah, did anyone not sign into the training? I tell you what I'll do is I'll go back to that original slide. Yes. We'll send another Google form out. What happened is we were supposed to have 50 people max, and then I kind of lost track of it, and I looked and I'm like, oh my God, it's like 91 people, and do we really want to shy people away and say, no, you can't come to learn? No. So that's why we tried to like stagger everybody, keep people apart, so we'll do what we have to do on that day, but we don't want to limit anyone from learning, obviously. Just like we don't want to limit any of our students from learning, we definitely don't want to limit the teachers either. Any other questions about the content before Denise speaks? Is anybody freaked out? Yeah, okay. I figured. It's okay. It's okay. It'll be okay. Trust me. Yep.
Okay, along those same lines, we're going to have these additional trainings. We are going to record them, and they will be available on YouTube. You all know your learning style as well. If sitting down and having Brent go through Google Classroom and walk around and show you how to get there and what to do, and that works for you, fabulous. We want you in this room. We're going to social distance. We're going to wear our face coverings. We're going to be extremely appropriate, and we're going to do it safely. You know the learner style that you are. If you feel comfortable, you've dabbled a little, you think you can watch it and want to just go that route, fabulous. Be an online learner at home. We're still here. You're going to email us questions. You're going to give us feedback. We're going to continue to go forward. So please know that as you see those Google surveys come out, we'll FCSD it just like we did last time. Everybody has access to it, but after the fact, we will also get that into YouTube. Okay? Any other questions about things that you heard today? Any other thoughts in regards to those pieces? You guys, I cannot thank you enough for giving up your time and your summer break to prepare for what comes next. The district does not have all the answers right now. We are doing our best to plan for plan 1, 2, 3, 4, color, whatever color our county is in. We're trying to work collaboratively with other agencies, other districts within our county to make sure that we can put the best pieces together. One thing that we as a district feel very strongly about is that we want to meet the needs of our staff, meet the needs of our students, and meet the needs of our families. We are a quality public education institution. That component doesn't go away. It may look different. Many, many, many of us in this room have been in public education for a long time. I don't know that it will ever look like it did when we started last school year. I believe it will continue to change, and I believe that what we will be faced with is going to be different. And that's okay. Because like Brent alluded to, in education, it continues to cycle through, and we call it something different, and we put a different look on it. It's all about good instruction. It's all about best practice. It's all about having a go at something and having a try. That's what we need to do, and we're all in this together, truly. So please give us feedback. Continue to ask your questions. It's going to help us grow as a district. It's going to help you feel more comfortable. It's going to help your team, your building, and all of us together move forward. I appreciate you guys so much giving up some time and coming in this morning. Please consider those other trainings because they will be more in depth on specific ideas. Have a great, great, great rest of your summer. Please be safe.